Hey there, everyone. Hey, everyone.
Think I was on mute. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, too, and good evening. Actually, it does make me wonder if you had a video conference 12 hours apart, has anyone ever actually made it where it was right on the line? You say good morning, but 1 nanosecond later, before the speed of light transit that message to the other party, does it become afternoon?
Ronald, this is why I always say good morning, good afternoon, good evening.
Yes, we need a nice German word where it's all together and it's about this long.
They're pretty good with those sorts of words,
Yes.
but they sort of double as tongue twisters there, Ron, so I'm not sure if you really want that. Be careful what you wish for.
Yes. All right. Uh,
Yeah, something like brunch or dinner.
yes, there we go. Beautiful. All right, Deep. Do we have Deep here? Where are you at, Deep? Uh-oh. All right. Um, yeah, please sign in. Here, I'll share the link here in the chat in case people showed up via the meeting reminder. Um, Okay, we'll go ahead and officially kick this off. It is the 28th of February. It is 8:03 a.m. Pacific time. Okay, so hello, I'm Ron, and today's agenda is quite short, I think, which could be good, could be bad. If anyone has things they want to discuss, this probably is a good meeting for it. I hear last meeting 2 weeks ago went quite well. Um, there was a couple presentations, and since then we had the announcement of the Nginx AI gateway, so that's pretty cool. Um, there's other AI gateways, of course, out there. I know the Solo IO Glue AI gateway is being donated, but I believe that's still a work in progress. So it looks like the Nginx one might have, which I assume is related because of the crews of people, but they use Envoy over there as well at Solo. So we'll see. We'll see how much longer it'll be before it shows up. But probably not too long, if I had to take a guess. So the main goal today, if Mr. Deep shows up, was to kind of have a little bit of a working session on our existing white papers. We'll see if he shows up. So we'll go through the regular agenda real quick, and then see if anyone has other things they want to talk about, um, and see if Deep
Just quick
can
question,
make it.
Ro, I know we probably want to give a presentation for our proposal today, right? Um, that we talk. I think we added this to the agenda, right?
Did we?
Yeah, I think so, right? We discussed it last week.
Oh shoot, did I not put it in here? Then we have time
Yeah, I think
for
you
it.
just you probably just remove it.
Oh man, I'm sorry. I thought that was from before. I thought I copied from before. My bad.
Yeah, like we kind of like want to give an overview of this, ML experience in the Kubeflow SDK
Yes,
uh,
that's right.
for the
I'm
broader
sorry,
community.
Andre. Yes, that's my bad.
Yeah, I think it
Yeah,
was
we'll probably post no
because
worries.
I think we put it up there a couple days ago.
Oh man, falling apart, flyer apart. All right. So yeah, maybe. Oh, okay. Sorry, that was new. Oh man, for some reason I thought that was copied from last time. All right, my fault. Okay, cool. All right. Well, we do have some stuff, so sweet. All right. All right, just going through the standing items. I'm not going to bring up the dashboard, but I do want to talk about the white papers. So one last check here. So Cameron, again, is kind of sherpeting the scheduling paper, and Deep is doing the same for the security paper. Both have made some progress over the last few weeks. We are wanting anyone in here who's looking to volunteer. We'd like to refocus to help these guys kind of start to get these things settled. So that's really the main message here. We've talked to some of the other members. We've got a lot of projects, a lot of potential projects, but we need to knock some of them out so they don't just kind of continue on into perpetuity. And we also have some new ones that have come across in the last months that we want to actually get started. So basically, on that note, we'd like to get these two wrapped up because they've been going on the longest. And with any kind of related technology, these things change. So it's okay to have a version 2. So really the point here is let's get version 1 out as best we can. So please, if you're interested in security or scheduling, please contact Cameron and Deep, and let's see if we get them the help they need to wrap it up. Okay. Anka, I see your hand. Yeah.
So I understand that the message here is really to wrap up these papers, just to make sure that we are aware we have the third paper on the compliance controls for AI. We are starting this effort as well as actually actively looking into the security paper technologies to make sure that we build up on that foundation. I wanted to introduce Talia Hooker from Red Hat, who volunteered to participate in this effort. So right now it would be also Vikas, who is out today, and we have Anne from IBM that would Anne Leslie will participate as well. I think Ronald, you're looking for seeing this group kind of formed volunteers, and I wanted to make sure that we have this on the radar, and we'll go through the formal administrative part to create the issue and put this in the as a working group. Just wanted to introduce the people and advertise if there is anybody else interested on getting the technologies from the security paper to the next level of detail on applying the controls from AI RMF to the next level of detail, more like benchmarking for AI. That's the context of that paper.
Yeah, sounds great. Thank you, Anka. Talia, nice to meet you. Welcome. Yeah, great. Please. Again, I'll put the names in the chat for anyone who is new. So Cameron is on scheduling. So if you're looking for them and their contact, and Deep is on.
Thanks, Anka, for the introduction. And also we have Rob Gata from Red Hat that just joined us. So he will also be participating with us.
Oh, great. Hello, Rob. Nice to have you.
Excellent, Rob. Good.
Run a quick question. I know that Deep has the security white paper meetings in the CNCF schedule. For Cameron's meetings, at one point he was piggybacking on Deep's ones. Do you know what the deal is with the scheduling? Because I tried to find out what's happening where and when with that one, and maybe it's a shame that Cameron's not in the session today.
I think they both they've been busy the last few weeks. I think they normally just ping here in the chat. It's not like on the official like TOC calendar. So
Okay.
yeah, well, good
I'll
point.
reach
Bring it
out.
up. Well, we should bring it up in the chat and make sure it's easy to find. But yeah, you're
Okay.
right.
Thanks for.
Yeah, those guys are always traveling around the world doing lots of cool things, so it's hard to lock them down. Okay. Anyone else have questions, comments about the white papers here? I got one more white paper to mention. It's not linked here.
Aaron, I'm just like wondering, so I guess scheduling one, we still don't publish, right? And don't have any timelines when we're planning to publish it.
when is London?
It's in 1 month, right?
Yeah, I think just just knowing how these things go and the other people who would edit it later, I think if we can get a draft by London, that would be great. I don't know if we'll get the final one because there's a backlog of papers that the CNCF has to approve, the TOC. So maybe we can get through, but just knowing how it's kind of gone in the past, probably the best we can afford is sharing a draft. But still a good goal, I think.
Okay.
Okay. Great. There's a sustainability AI group as well for those who may not be aware. And so that this group is pretty close to having their kind of initial paper about sustainability in AI and cloud native systems. And so that's what this page is showing. So I'll put the link here if anyone wants to take a peek. From my understanding, as of this morning, it is now ready for kind of final editing, any kind of reflow that, just confirmation stuff. So I'll be doing that probably this weekend, barring any other communication I got to do with the group. So anyway, do take a look. Like to get your thoughts on it. And again, no paper is perfect, but we also can't wait forever either because things change, and it's good to just get things out so we can have conversations. So yeah, please, we'd like to help these guys out, and that's kind of where this paper stands. So this has been going on for a while as well, but it's looking pretty good. Okay, I think that's it for the papers. Okay. All right. So before we get into the presentations, maybe just the other couple of quick ones to knock off. I missed the last meeting, so I'm pretty sure I didn't mention this 2 meetings ago. I don't see it in the notes. There is the MITRE effort, the CVE numbering system. For those who aren't familiar, CVE, critical vulnerabilities, those are the numbers you get when there's a hack and then there's a response. Those numbers can be created by different groups called CNAs. But ultimately, CVE is probably, we'll just say the gold standard when it comes to like somebody's getting hacked. Here's where you can get information about it and how we manage it. There's other mechanisms as well, but that's probably one of the premier ones. And so this group has started last year focusing around AI, which probably comes as no surprise. They just recently, as of 10 days ago, published their second blog on what it means to give a CVE number to an AI-related attack. So not all things are, well, I don't want to mislead people. Not all things, all attacks get a CVE number. And so an example in the AI realm is something like Poison GPT. So Poison GPT is kind of like the hello world hack example of AI. Basically, you download a well-known model, you fine tune it, you do something, to it, you re-upload it, and now people start using that one because it's, based off of a popular derivative, and it's, giving bad answers. The reality is that may be bad, but the CVE MITRE's position is that's not a hack. That's just a bad outcome. The whole tool chain is built to allow people to actually refine things, right? So with that kind of idea in mind, what bar do you have to cross to actually be an attack? So even that's a little gray because there's a group that says, well, it's one thing for Ron's version of refined llama to get hacked or poisoned. It's another thing for Meta's version, right? The one that everyone's downloading, right? So in that case, maybe we do a CVE in a poison GPT attack when it's a super popular model. So anyway, that's the kind of thing that's going on. How this works is there's a working group. They meet every other Monday. The next one will be this Monday. So you can come to the meetings, watch the meetings. And so The goal is to go through a series of blogs to figure out some guidance, get some community feedback, and then there's proposals that are presented to the board of the CVE kind of effort in the CNAs. And based on all this critical feedback, ultimately they'll come up with some set of rules that will make CVEs numbering happen against AI based attacks. So those are the two blogs. And yeah, it's been going on for over a year if you're curious about this kind of stuff. Any questions on that? Okay. And if you can't come, you can always ask me. I attend the meetings. So if anybody needs anything, you can always ping me and I'm happy to relay messages. All right. That brings us to our presentations. One last check, no deep. Okay. All right. Andre, sorry for the removal. Would you like to kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. No worries, like Ron. Let me just give me a second. Just get started. How much time do we have? Do we have any other topics after this discussion that we're going to have? Like any other demos or topics after this presentation about this Qflow SDK that we have in agenda?
Sorry, I muted myself. So I see Keyflow SDK. There's Llama Stack. Is that part of it?
Yeah, so everything is related basically.
Okay, then no, I think you're good to go. It's all
All right.
you.
Let me share my screen. Yeah, so thank you for giving time to speak about it. Just let me maybe just reintroduce myself to other folks. So my name is Andre. I work at Apple. I've been in this working group for quite some time. I was helping them with multiple white papers and initiatives. So mostly I've been in the Qflow community for the last 7 years, trying to see how we can, leverage Kubernetes for AI and ML workloads during those time. Mostly like, trying to build distributed training, and AutoML systems there, but right now involved in many different projects for AI and ML initiatives on top of Kubernetes and cloud native tools. So before I get started, let me ask you a question. Do you have any kind of data scientists or ML engineers on this call who usually interact with PyTorch APIs rather than, Kubernetes or other, APIs, just to give, some understanding which folks we have here?
I do in training, but that's about the extent of it for myself.
All right. Yeah, because this proposal is mostly for them, for those type of personas. So we really want to speak with data scientists and ML engineers here. Just want to hear if anyone here, kind of familiarize themselves more with the, with those type of people, because I think this will be very useful to gather the feedback from them. And just before I jump to this, let me just give you an overview, what we have today in the ecosystem, right? So just to give a quick overview of Qflow, right? So today it's actually big. It's not a single project, right? It's a kind of combination of different open source projects, which can be used independently, or it could be used together with the platform. And every project kind of designed to address different stages in the ML lifecycle, right? So we have projects for model development like notebooks, or data processing like Spark operator, training, tuning, serving, and the pipelines to stitch all these pieces together. So there are many different projects live under the ecosystem, which allows us to kind of address almost every stage in the ML lifecycle. And I think I shared this diagram with you before, but typical ML lifecycle associated with multiple stages, right? So usually when ML engineer come to the platform or come to some sort of development environment, they want to process their data, they want to do some feature engineering, maybe some data processing, then they want to develop their models using the Jupyter notebooks or any other some sort of cloud ID tools. Then they want to train and tune their models and serve them when they're ready to to be deployed. And everything can be stitched into the pipeline, and all the things also needs to be associated with this, things like model registry or, feature store, which allows you to do some sort of other, aspects when you do this kind of ML development. So if you take a look today in the Qflow picture, what we have in the ecosystem, we almost cover every stage in this, development experience. But what we noticed throughout the years, usually it's kind of hard for us to work with ML engineers and data scientists, because like we kind of rely on Kubernetes CRD for most of all these activities, and sometimes like ML engineers, data scientists don't really need to, they don't want to learn those CRDs and don't want to really understand how Kubernetes like work. So we all of us know, like when people want to do ML, they don't really need to know that this ML platform is around top of Kubernetes. So we like throughout the years we try to like work with the communities and different end users to understand like how we can simplify this process, so we can still provide this value of individual components or individual like pieces of the Kubeflow ecosystem, and at the same time like don't really give a signal that all of this is run on top of Kubernetes. So data scientists and ML engineers can just be focused on PyTorch or TensorFlow or any other framework they know, and still use this kind of advanced tool to scale their ML on top of like advanced cloud native ecosystem. So with that, like, let me jump to the proposal. So any questions so far? Like, feel free to interrupt me if you want to, be more specific. Yeah,
I
Rodron.
think it's a great idea. Less knowledge of Kubernetes to do this stuff, the better.
Yeah, absolutely. And we see the trend, like like that's especially right now we going towards multi-cluster and other capabilities of Kubernetes. Kubernetes become more mature for like batch workloads and for AI workloads. Like we see that how we can transition those folks from like Slurm environments to more kind of environment which is around top of Kubernetes, but at the same time, we don't even need to explain them what is Kubernetes as a technology, right? So they can still be focused on PyTorch or like on Hugging Face or on APIs they want to work with, and using this power of scaling, right, and orchestration. Yeah, so with that, let me jump to this proposal. So again, like as I said, throughout these years, like our community mostly interact with DevOps engineers, MLOps engineers, who kind of like familiarize themselves with Kubernetes environment, but but that also kind of unfortunately we kind of create this barrier for more kind of data scientists and ML engineer persona who don't really like know how to interact with our APIs. So what is this proposal about is to kind of create some sort of unified SDK layer, like unified Python SDK layer. So initially it will be Python, but of course in the future, like we can think about other SDKs like Swift or Java or like wherever like Rust, like wherever like frameworks ML community will decide to use. We will adopt this SDK to make sure we can support other languages. But the goal is to design unified layer on top of all of these Kubeflow components to give you experience like we try to identify here. So the ML engineer, like we combine ML engineer and data scientist in sort of ML user persona. But basically what we think they want to do, they just want to open the Jupyter Lab or any kind of cloud ID environment where they can pip install all the required libraries like Torch, TensorFlow, JAX, and at the same time, they maybe install the Kubeflow SDK with these libraries. And then they want to maybe prototype some type using the PyTorch APIs. They want to like launch those jobs to scale this PyTorch across multiple nodes, across multiple machines to fine tune their models. And also they want to consume the results within the same Jupyter environment and they collect and analyze the results. So we're kind of like working towards building this cloud environment, like this, we call this kind of ML experience environment where ML engineer can see the value of, like all these advanced tools and at the same time just don't really understand that they kind of interact with Kubernetes. So the ideal experience, and I will jump to the goals after this, looks like this. As I said, like ML user, just open Jupyter, or we can call this, Cloud ID. They install the Kubeflow Python SDK, and then they can launch those jobs using just the same Python environment. It could be Spark jobs, it could be PyTorch jobs, so we call them here train jobs, and they can also launch other jobs to optimize, their code, like maybe do hyperparameter optimization, neural architecture search, and everything is Python. So everything is Python, and I will show like some examples how it might look like. They don't really need to worry about all other aspects, like how, like you should appropriately like do gang scheduling, or you should, configure your Kubernetes resources. You just, writing the PyTorch code and you just scale it. So this is like the, our North Star. And let me just maybe go briefly to the goal. So any questions so far for like what we try to do here?
Good.
All right. So in terms of the goals, yeah, Aaron, you want to say something?
I was just saying that I'm good.
All right. So we kind of like identify a few goals for us, and we understand like this is a kind of the big project, like multi-year project for us to going towards to. Like our goal is to kind of like create a new working group called ML Experience, and this is the proposal. If you're interested to take a look, like we want to establish this working group within the Qflow community, so we can work with our end users, especially ML engineer and data science person like ML users, to see how we can streamline their ML development on top of all this advanced tools. So if you want to be involved, like take a look. So this project will be is part of the charter of this working group, but there is much more in this than an SDK, right? Like a lot of observability tools, like Jupyter Lab extensions, and other things which can simplify your ML development environment. Also, as I said before, we want to design a unified Python SDK layer, which allows you to interact with Qflow APIs. It could be the pipelines APIs, trainer API, optimizing API. So everything will be in Python. Yes, and we want to again, the goal is for us to reduce duplication because today we have different SDKs. So for example, we have KFP, like Qflow pipelines, which also has the layer of their Python experience. So we try to see how we can unify all those experience in a single library. So folks can leverage the Qflow tools within the single environment. And if they want to do training, they can use our trainer API. If they want to do, parameter optimization, they can use our optimizer API. Everything within the single Python interface. And there are other things like feature store integrations, and that we also will speak about, and the model registry integrations like Spark operator as well. Yeah, so with that, we kind of try to position ourselves in terms of what is achievable initially and what is our North Star, as I said before. So initially we kind of be focusing on maybe one or two components like Qflow Trainer and Qflow Optimizer / Katib. I think right now we call this project Katib, but we try to see how we can maybe initially enable some sort of few APIs for users so they can see the immediate value of this SDK. But in the future, for the long term, we're planning to integrate more components within SDK, like the Qflow pipelines, for example, like the client part of Qflow pipelines. We try to see how we can consolidate it within this single environment. Yeah, so the proposal, right? So again, as I said, they just use this SDK, something like this. They import it from the main library. They import different clients like Spark client, Trainer client, Optimizer client, KServe client, and they can just use a very simple Python API to train, optimize the models, and serve them within the single, single development environment without know anything about Kubernetes. Yeah, definitely we will also talk about Feast after this, and I think let me also share you yeah, some of the examples, right? Like what we tried to achieve initially. So for example, this is one of the user stories could be when you can do fine tuning, right? So I think previously in this call I was giving you a demo about this trainer initiative where we try to build the blueprints for fine tuning. So with these blueprints for fine tuning, again, it allows us to actually leverage those blueprints to do the very quick fine tuning using the simple Python interface. As just one of the examples could be me as an ML engineer, I can list my available runtimes for post training, for fine tuning. Then I kind of reusing this single interface to just say I want to use this runtime like Llama 3.2 billion, and then I want to use the trainer API to fine tune this using LoRa or using a QLoRa, Dora, different optimization techniques I want to tweak. So I just I take the runtime that ML engineer platform engineer prepare for me, and then as as a data scientist I can quickly see a value of those models and quickly leverage these Qflow tools to do the fine tuning. So this is one of the examples how we can leverage this SDK, similar to this for traditional more traditional ML or more than for power users. I can write my PyTorch code using Jupyter Lab environment or using any other environment where I can write my PyTorch code. And then I can just, bypass this function towards my training function so it can be scaled across thousands of nodes and multiple GPUs. So again, no Kubernetes knowledge, no understanding how to configure CRD, just passing my training function and say I want to scale this training function across like hundreds of nodes, and for every of those nodes I want to use 5 GPUs. So everything will be possible, and this is like what we try, how this SDK could simplify the experience for Emily, right? For ML users. Yeah, any questions for the user stories, by the way? Any things you wanted me to deeply talk about?
Andre, can you comment again? This is what you're shooting for, or this is already done?
Yeah, so some of the things already done. So for example, this experience is already possible. It is not yet published on the PyP, so we're working on the release and a future release, but this is already possible with our trainer initiative that we started in June last year. So again, the user story number one also like almost possible. So this like things around fine tuning. We're working on another cap to allows us to do the fine tuning using TorchTune library. So if you're interested, I can also link you some proposals in the description. But some of this is possible, but some of this is like a North Star. Like I mentioned about pipelines integration, KFP. So KFP is not yet consolidated, or like feature store or model registry. This is still kind of under discussion. Francisco, I think, will speak more about it. But some of this functionality already possible even today.
Thank you.
Andre, do you have a concern that there's going to be latency in terms of the features which are committing into each different component making their way into the SDK that could impede the adoption and usage of the SDK here? Or do you have all
Yeah,
the teams properly aligned to ensure that the cadence of the development of each different stream flows into the SDK essentially in parallel?
yeah, it's a good question, Josh. I think we discussed it a little bit about the proposal, right? So we try to kind of design the release lifecycle in a way that the control plane stays separate from the client side. So we try to see how, I think I have some proposals here, but we try to like, we're also looking for some ideas, but I agree with you, this is kind of like a challenging problem, how you can synchronize a single project across multiple control plane environments, because all of them kind of maintain the different release lifecycle and different release cadence. But we try to see when the client side can be updated on terms of the control plane update. So one of the proposals could be, like we release the control plane, we bump the version of this control plane in our Qflow SDK, then we release the SDK, and then users get like updated version of those environments. In the same time, like we try to see how we can make sure platform engineers kind of allow users to switch between the different CRDs version. So just for the context, some of the Qflow APIs is driven by CRDs, but some of them is driven by API server. Like for example, Qflow pipelines, so they interact with API server rather than with gRPC, rather than with CRD, which means like for this type of things, we're looking for different kind of ideas how we can consolidate it. But we want to I think I have some ideas here to see, for example, like we provide a compatibility table between client version, Kubernetes version, and the control plane version. So we believe this kind of platform engineer responsibility to make sure MLEs can get the appropriate version of SDK and appropriate feature parity. But we will provide this as a community. We will provide this compatibility version between clients, control plane, and Kubernetes somewhere. And the problem is, even today, this problem exists because we're managing different SDKs today. Like we're managing SDK for training operator, we're managing SDK for Qflow pipelines, and we kind of like still have the same problem how to create this compatibility table across all those SDKs, right? That's my suggestion to you.
Okay, no, that's one challenge which we do see, right? When you're trying to consolidate everything into a single SDK, particularly if you've got multiple projects, that there's obviously the challenge of entropy, and also challenges regarding common semantic conventions, right? So
Yeah. But again, like I think like only one thing that we should all agree about Kubernetes version, because like we rely on Kubernetes Python client, right? And the CRD version, like this is still under discussion. But I think
Mhm.
like we kind of like we can provide the kind of migration from the clients to the newer version of CRD if this actually will require for us to bump to. For example, like if we migrate from V1 alpha 1 to V2 alpha, like sorry, V1 alpha 1 to V1 beta 1, right? So we kind of like try to design this migration mechanism on the client side, so they can always make sure like the features they using is compatible with this version of SDK. But I think like if some of the community members have any ideas how we can design this better, like let us know. But this is kind of our North Star. I agree that there will be a lot of challenges associated with unified layer across multiple control plane components. Um,
Yeah, one
yeah,
mention
go
there
ahead,
that
Francisco.
I think an approach that we're probably end up having to take is consolidation among SDKs. And that doesn't necessarily solve all of the problems, especially with dependency management of all of the sub projects. But I think, you know, it came up with KFP in particular, where you know there are a lot of implementation details we really have to iron out in order to actually make this happen. I think us having the explicit vision is probably the best mechanism to align everybody to get us to rally towards that, because I think the common thread among all of the components is that we all want to give end users a really good experience, and I think that we all kind of have to accept that the work is on us to make it work, right? And you know, it won't be overnight. It'll have to be you know, quite a bit of hard work to make that happen.
Yeah, I just like want to share one of the also like ideas in terms of availability of those resources. So this is like how this SDK would be structured, right? So I have like unified layer of Qflow project, right? Which will have individual components for every project. Like we have a client for trainer, client for optimizer, client for KFP, like for pipelines. And then user can actually use this SDK, even some of those control plane components is not available. So this is like the power of this SDK, right? So for example, like imagine, you know, I want to install this SDK, but platform engineers don't really install KFP for me, like Qflow pipelines. But like platform engineers only leverage maybe trainer or optimizer, which means like in the client level, like before actually allow users to use this, you know, public APIs like train or optimize or you know, like DSL language from KFP, we can make sure that the control plane components are installed. So this is like one of the examples. Like so before actually interacting with checking that the control plane is installed, which actually allows, you know, this SDK be portable and also extensible. So it doesn't mean that, you know, platform engineers need to install the entire Qflow stack if they want to start to see value of this SDK, right? Uh, and like in terms of dependency management, as Francisco mentioned, we also try to work with, like, for example, in pipe packages and setup packages, you can use extras, right? So if, you know, if pipelines has a lot of extra dependencies, we can just say you can install the entire SDK using, you know, people install Qflow all, or you can install Qflow only for trainer capabilities, right? And you can put this, you know, like in your installs. So in that case, you will not install the entire stack if you don't really want to use it, right? Um, yeah, so there are different kind of opportunities for us to see how we can make it easier and more kind of extensible and portable. But we're looking for like ideas or suggestions from other members if you have something in mind, if this is not going to work. Yeah. Any other questions before I move on to other topics?
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Andre, for the.
Right. Let me. So in that case, Francisco, before I pass to you, any things I missed, like to talk about before we talk about Llama Stack?
Let's see. I think you like we can point to it and just we can note that it's a discussion is like the pros and cons of packaging itself. Josh, to your point, you
Yep.
know, there's an explicit section it still needs a little more attention, but it is probably top of mind about what are the trade-offs are, and I think like my guess is how it'll work out is we'll try it one way, and if it's not working, we might have to pivot. But I think that you know, we'll probably be able to find a good path.
Yeah, I think like the goal is to make it easier for like our ML users, right? And you know, like all of these challenges they're still associated with the existing, you know, Qflow architecture and how we serve this as the case, right?
This is really just the forcing function to make us solve those issues.
Yeah. That's right. Just like maybe just last point I want to make in terms of KFP integration and Kubeflow pipelines, because many of you probably, I think Kubeflow pipelines are one of the most popular projects under the Kubeflow ecosystem. And like just to give you like, you know, an idea how those SDK can be integrated with KFP, is like you can basically construct the end-to-end pipeline using DSL even today when we kind of like integrate this SDK for at least Spark, Operator, Trainer, and Kserve or like Optimizer. You can basically, you know, like reuse it under the single DSL components, single Kubeflow pipelines DSL components, and say I want to extract my features, I want to fine-tune my LLM, and then I want to serve this LLM using these different clients like Trainer client, Spark client, Kserve clients, and everything is available for you to play with, right? So again, you as ML user just focus on your, you know, ML code rather than focusing how to stitch all these pieces together. And Kubeflow pipelines play the key role for more kind of end-to-end ML experience, which actually will be very valuable for, you know, for ML user persona. So again, this is very powerful in terms of like what is achievable for the long term. All right, so that, Francisco, do you want to talk a little bit about Llama Stack? Like, do you want to share your screen or?
Yeah, you can just go right to
Sure.
to the section. So actually, can you scroll down just a little bit more and a little bit more, just so we can include the diagram in. Oh, actually, you can scroll up still. So actually, I'll just share my screen.
Okay, no worries. Go ahead.
Let's see. So 1 second, folks. And happy Friday for all who celebrate.
Happy Friday. It's a safer world. Andre's no longer scrolling and showing the diagram.
Exactly.
He's a great scroller. Probably one of the best scrollers of all time, from what I've seen. So, okay. I'm going to talk about Llama Stack. So I'm Francisco. I work at Red Hat. I've spent quite a bit of time doing machine learning infrastructure, data engineering, data infrastructure. I'm a maintainer for Feast. I'm also on the Kubeflow steering committee member. And, you know, I was academically trained as more on the modeling side. And over time, I, you know, stumbled into infrastructure because I found that getting my models in production was hard. And so I really just love this work. I think it's an amazing time to be alive, to get to like work on all this new novel AI infrastructure. And I feel very privileged to be able to work with Kubeflow and Andre and the entire community. So that's a little about me. I spent a lot of time recently on Llama Stack. Llama Stack is this, you know, composable agent framework that's being sponsored by Meta. You know, it was announced at some point last year, and it's meant to be a bunch of building blocks. And it's pretty neat, and they kind of highlight, you know, the kind of agent nature and like the sub-function callings and tools that you can use with agents dynamically. And it's obviously grounded in the Llama models that Meta released that kind of really disrupted the world with kind of these open source models that in the trainer world, we spend some time fine tuning. And, you know, it's meant to give the primitives, the kind of building blocks that people can create AI applications on top of. And so I created this kind of short section in the document to outline how Kubeflow can work with the Llama Stack community to one, like ensure Kubeflow's relevance in this new Gen AI era, because Kubeflow is great and it has really the kind of fault tolerance, resilience, and scalability that you actually really need for production AI applications. And then two, to continue to expand Kubeflow's footprint, you know, and use cases. And in general, it's a really great way to actually use Kubeflow is the short version, right? How you do it, there's actually work, and I've done some contributions to Llama Stack community that I'm happy to share about. It's pretty neat. And if you look at the audience that's being targeted for Llama Stack versus kind of Kubeflow, the disambiguation is that Llama Stack is really focusing on the kind of new emergent AI engineer. I'm not sure if folks have read Chip Hoon's new book, AI Engineering. It's great. I really recommend it to everybody. In it, she actually talks a little bit about this dichotomy between the AI engineer and the ML engineer, and the kind of nuances and differences. But the short version is AI engineered emerged from ML engineering. The things that we've built in the Kubeflow and ML community over the last decade plus were learned from hard experiences, from failure points. And, you know, we think that leveraging that in the Llama Stack ecosystem can be very powerful, again, as a mechanism for growth and Kubeflow's continued success. And so I gave a little bit more details about strengths and stuff, but that's not as important. What's really more important is kind of this diagram here that highlights how Llama Stack presents themselves today. And I have a bunch of arrows, which makes it a little bit harder to read. And then how Kubeflow presents itself today. And you know, they have kind of these agents, memory, which is basically a database, inference, which we all understand quite well, evals, which we know from, you know, training, this is loss function metrics, right? And post-training, which we know is training or fine-tuning, synthetic data generation is a somewhat novel area. You know, safety that we don't have quite an analog for. Models from model registry, shields and data sets. And then service providers, what this ends up looking like is that Kubeflow itself could be a service provider, the Kubeflow ecosystem for Llama Stack. And again, highlighting the composable nature and how you can leverage the strength of Kubernetes for AI ML in this kind of new world. And the mapping here is a little fuzzy, but the idea is that, and you'll notice that there's kind of this mass density among Kubeflow pipelines and then amongst Feast as well. And amongst inference, because like the core challenges remain the same. You have to operate on data. You have to kind of send data, right? RAG is kind of the core thing that most people talk about a lot in Gen AI. And in Feast, we built support for RAG as a proper first-class citizen. In Kubeflow pipelines, a lot of the batch tasks that are done you know, are very well suited to pipelines. In fact, pipelines really sit at the heart of a lot of operations in AI ML, as you know, most ML users understand, which is why they love the product so much. And so it kind of naturally lends itself to be coupled across a bunch of places here. You might be familiar with like GPT tasks. Under the hood, they might have celery workers or something, but you know, we could probably set it up as a Kubeflow pipeline. And so, you know, if we were to single shot this and say like, hey, we had a really nice SDK that we could wrap up all of the kind of best components that we like from Kubeflow, we could then probably embed this in the Llama Stack in a really easy way. Now that's like 2 years from now. How it'll look next year or in 6 months won't be as elegant, I'm sure. But the idea is that this kind of gives us another forcing function to you know, have a really good story for Kubernetes in the generative AI wave that also aligns with Kubeflow, if that makes sense. And so I'm happy to talk about any of those details, you know.
Francisco, can you give us maybe a 30-second elevator pitch just on Llama Stack? Like what, like today, what is its like primary, like we crush everyone else?
Yeah, and so I
this.
can give you like a pretty trivial example that that really highlights it. In like one of their demos. So this is an example, and it's, let's see, this is 120 lines of code, not that long. These are some documents that it's going to download from an example, and then you're going to be able to like RAG with an agent, and you know, you have an AI application that supports agentic RAG that you can do a Q&A with a set of documents. And so a lot of startups that I've been working with or talked to or I'm friends with, where their founders are running, you know, are very passionate about these agentic workflows, right? And RAG in particular. And in Kubeflow land, we have RAG via Feast, but we don't have kind of these agent primitives of like, oh, how do you do this in a dynamic way that kind of adheres to this agentic nature? And Llama Stack offers that kind of out of the box.
Yeah, just like I just also want to say, I think like what we see kind of the trend, and I see Shravan on the call, maybe you can also speak from your perspective, but the trend is like people need more building blocks. And given like, you know, in the world of LLM ops today, even before people did a lot of copy pasting, but right now, like there are a lot of building blocks that can be reused, to build those agents, right? And to make sure, for example, like what is a task you have? For example, like you need to do some sort of, text to SQL generation, right? Can I take a look how others folks are doing? For example, I take Llama as my foundational model, right? Like I, have this knowledge base, right? Or other things that I need to plug in. So how I can see how others are building those, like similar blueprints or similar, like the pipelines, so I can also like reuse it for my specific use case. So it's kind of like ML, which is driven by use case and like the goals you want to achieve. I think this is what we see the pattern with. I don't know, like Shawn, like, do you want to also give your perspective on this since you kind of like is also exploring these areas?
No, I think this is kind of comprehensive viewpoints. I think this is mostly like what you're seeing is that the same idea about reusing small components also in the training aspects. This is more like AI apps, app development, but even in the all of the training, tuning, fine tuning, post training, all the aspects, the similar stack are being stood up. So yeah, I think the same methodology kind of falls into the overall idea of what the SDK is about. So I think um, really we're all kind of using the same thing. So excited about all these things.
Hi, this is Talia. So I think for your 30-second elevator pitch, what I would throw in for agentic is that, it's great that we have these LLMs, but still it's a lot of writing prompts and so forth. And what we're seeing in the market is that by 2028 or so forth, most of it will be developing the apps and the agents that businesses and end users can use on their own to be more productive. So that's the journey that the Llama and the agentic frameworks are supporting.
Yeah, agreed.
I have a question so Ricardo. What's the glue between Llama Stack and Kubeflow? I mean, you have all the arrows here, but is there like a glue between those? Like you're running Llama Stack on top of Kubeflow? Are there
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
they're
correct.
independent. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, so yeah, like the exact idea is that that Kubeflow would be a provider. The Kubeflow components, the SDK wrapping these components up would be the provider for certain Llama Stack components. So concretely, with a very clear example, the Kubeflow trainer there would be used in the post-training kind of endpoint that they exposed.
And I can also give the particular example to Ricardo. Like we last week had a call with TorchTune folks. Like historically, Kubeflow was kind of a project which kind of like stitch ML and cloud ecosystem together. So I had a call with TorchTune folks to see how we can reuse their, framework and library to port TorchTune on top of Kubernetes, because the majority of examples, like if you take a look at PyTorch website, using Slurm today, but there are a lot of people who take Kubernetes as the fundamental technology for ML and AI, and we try to see how we can have the sort of glue between, like those ecosystems and Kubernetes, so we can be very opinionated for people who, like decide to use Kubernetes for ML. They have this kind of, building blocks and connecting layers, right? And I linked one of the proposals also in our community notes if you want to be involved, but like this is what we building initially for those LLM blueprints. We will reuse the TorchTune for this functionality rather than building something from scratch, right? Like we want to avoid duplication. Yeah, good.
Yeah,
makes sense. Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
And I think the part that I'm particularly passionate about here is really the ability to like, again, get like the world was changed by ChatGPT, right? Everybody is now doing AI engineering. Kubeflow historically was focused on enabling and empowering ML experts, but now we have a lot of more traditional software engineers, using AI in their workloads. But the Kubeflow ecosystem still provides the best tools. and we want to kind of help them, get embedded into there. And so that's kind of how we're thinking about it. And so, yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I think going forward, like any type of engineer will be using AI in some way or another.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah, I think like this kind of, I mean, there are still like a lot of kind of, how to say, like it's hard to connect people who, for example, build LangGraph and LangChain and other libraries, great, awesome libraries, but it's hard to see how those libraries can be ported on top of cloud native technologies, right? This also was like an open topics like for years, right? The people who built, the fundamental technologies for ML, they not really think about how to run those technologies on Kubernetes. This is why we like see a lot of challenges, for example, to run Torch at scale on Kube, right? Because like you have your own Torch scheduling, right? How you can port it into Kubernetes, how you can provide enough of fault tolerance and other capabilities, right? So make sure, like, I think those guys keep in mind that if they want to see those frameworks be adopted at scale, they really need to like, think deeply on top of those integrations as well, right? Like orchestration, how to run them on Kubernetes, like what is actually Kubernetes. I hope with this initiative we can, have our communities more closer connected, right? Yeah.
Andre,
Yeah,
I think one of the challenges sorry, go ahead, cut it.
No, I was going to say that there's also like room for integration between those tools that you talked about, like LlamaChain and Llama Index, with Kubernetes, because it's not there yet. So like maybe users can create a LangChain application that talks to a Kubernetes endpoint or something, right? Or
Correct.
specific,
No,
or
that's
RAG.
exactly right. Exactly
Yeah.
right.
Yeah.
Like this would kind of serve as an example in many ways to other AI application builders of like, hey, here's how we can use this directly using Kubeflow.
Do you have a state? Go ahead.
No,
Just
sorry.
interrupt.
Yeah. No, go ahead. I think
Yeah.
Josh had
Yeah.
a question.
So what I was going to say before is I think our challenge is particularly in the area of agentic. You've got so many different frameworks and deployments out there, and it's not always the same agentic system interfacing with a pair of its own architectures, right? You may have LangChain interfacing with DSPy agents, right? So you've got that entropy out there where you may have variation in agents that need to communicate with one another that would also obviously benefit from the Kubeflow architecture on the back end. So I think it's an important problem space, and certainly great work, guys, at sort of pulling this together. I like the pitch. But I think it's, things are moving very quickly, and it's difficult to really handle, all the different capabilities and all the different frameworks out there coming together. So
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And like in reality, like some majority of those frameworks probably will not live like the next 5 years, right? Like we need to like make sure we kind of like be composable in microservice architecture. We can support everything because we saw this, transition from Chainer to PyTorch, from TensorFlow to PyTorch. So, like, I agree with you. Like, it's kind of challenging to design a system which can support everything, right? Especially right now,
Sure.
like how we transition. But I think the building blocks we should kind of like define as a reference architecture, some sort of, how we can, like solve the fundamental problems for, ML and LLM, right? LLMOs, right?
Yeah. And I plus one, right? Like the space is fast moving. Who's going to have the actual staying power is going to be really important, which I think is why, Llama Stack is a good example, but we don't necessarily have to like focus on just solving for Llama Stack. As you mentioned, there are other agent frameworks. Hugging Face has a pretty popular one, right? So long as we define an SDK that can really enrich these things, then I think that we'll have the capability to be, have people using our SDK in other frameworks without us even knowing. That's kind of the goal. Is the hope.
Yeah, be abstracted, right? Yeah. Yeah, go tell you.
Yeah, I was just gonna echo that, Andre, to work, or as somebody else said, focus on the capabilities and what these agentic systems can do, and Llama should just be like a reference implementation or, one, but also open the opportunities for other frameworks to, bring in their instantiation of it.
Yep. Yeah, like composable microservice and extensible architecture, right? It's kind of like why we still
Exactly.
there, right? And that makes sense. I know we're over time, but what a great discussion.
Well,
Like,
yeah,
yeah. If you want
Francisco,
to, like,
thank you for that overview,
No problem.
and
Thank
Andre as well.
Thank you
feel
all.
free to feel free to reach out. Just want to say, like, feel free to reach out if you have any follow-up questions. But this is just a start, and there are many other things we want to work on. So looking forward for the further discussions.
Thank
So
you.
guys, everyone, I want to mention one quick thing before you leave. If you have any meetings, conferences, things like that coming up in the next, weeks, please share in the chat. I know I always hear from people like, oh, I didn't know that was happening. So if you happen to be aware of a meetup or a conference or anything in the near term, please just dump it there in the chat so people can keep an eye on it. Okay, I think we'll officially end it here. It's 9 o'clock. If anyone wants to stay in chat, that's cool. But otherwise, we'll officially end it. So, thank you, everyone.
Thank you all.
All right, Ricardo, are you there?
I'm trying to leave the meeting. I'm gonna close it. So just give me a second.
All right.
My internet was down, so sorry about that. So
No worries. So next week, or next meeting, we'll have Natan from Homes GPT.
perfect. That's awesome.
All right.
Let's keep
Good.
it going.
Yeah.
Yep.
All right.
Talk to you later.
All
Bye.
right. See you, man.